Greetings, Earthlings. This is Dave with another episode of And Another Thing with Dave. Today I want to chime in and talk about democratic socialism. The myth that we keep hearing repeated over and over and over ad infinitum by the lamestream media is that socialism has always failed, blah, blah, blah. Actually, it's never been tried. The examples that people cite when they say that are totalitarianism. So Hitler, he was a frickin' dictator. Stalin, frickin' dictator. The Soviet Union, communism. Not socialism, not democratic socialism. Most of the free world operates under some form of democratic socialism. Now, you hear people saying it's never worked, it will never work. Well, I call bullshit on that. Let's look at our society. Let's just look at the United States, right? Military, socialist program, paid for by the taxpayers. The hell else am I looking at? Fire department, socialist program. Police department, socialist program. Sheriff's department, socialist program. They seem to work pretty well. I would shudder to think of what our society would be like without any of those. I'm not a war hawk by any means, but we do need a military, preferably to defend our borders and not be, instigating regime change wars for extractive resources all over the globe. But I digress. So let me come back to our version of capitalism. All right, capitalism in a nutshell, like hardcore extreme capitalism in a nutshell, right? A casino. You go to a casino, you bet it all on 13 black, you lose, you're fucked. You're done. There's nobody coming to bail you out. You can't call the government and say, oh, but, I'm too important to fail. That's not capitalism. Capitalism, hardcore capitalism, or just capitalism, is sink or swim. So the bank bailout of 2008, socialist program. But it didn't benefit society at all, right? And let's just talk about some numbers from that. And I got these numbers from the news with Rick Sanchez on RT. He gave me these statistics. Thank you very much, Rick Sanchez. Love your show. So the bank bailout of 2008 cost taxpayers $83 billion. Of that, $31 billion went to executives for bonuses. GM got federal contracts of $600 million. No-compete federal contracts. Didn't have to go out and muster up the work. It was a no-bid contract. Here's a gimme, $600 million. GM also got a tax break of $500 million. And guess what? The CEO of GM made $22 million. So that's total bullshit right there. Right? So you can't have it both ways. There is no such thing as too big to fail. Too big to exist, maybe. Let's delve into this just a little bit about the banks and the bailout. People were like, oh my God, well, if we don't bail out the banks, they're going to crash and it's going to create this nightmare and our economy is going to get way worse. Well, I've heard some statistics that if we would have taken the money that we gave the banks and given it to homeowners, every homeowner that got foreclosed on would have actually been able to pay off their mortgage in entirety. Imagine that. Pay off their mortgage in entirety. Now what they had as a home loan payment, that's liquid assets. They're going on vacation. They might buy a new car. They're going on, they're going to spend a large portion of that money, which would, boom, hugely boost the economy. Instead, Bank of America got, I think, $62 billion or something like that. $62 million, excuse me. then they decided to not put it in the U.S. economy. And their logic in this, the whole bailout was to, stimulate the economy. But B of A said, oh, well, we're getting a better return on our investment outside of the country. But that's not what we gave you the money for. So, total bullshit. So if we would have let those too big to exist banks implode and fail, it would have created a vacuum, right? And this is how capitalism should work. Somebody fails, some other opportunist comes in and takes advantage of that void. So my example is small, local, too small to fail, credit unions. Credit unions are actually owned by the depositors. So as a member of your local credit union, you are part owner of said credit union. So instead of having these, Goliath banks, international Goliath banks, we would have had just a bunch more local credit unions. There wouldn't be any the sky is falling, this and that. No. That's just because a bunch of corporate fucks wanted to keep their game going because they got a pretty good game going. Well, I call bullshit. So let's talk about democratic socialism. And what does that actually mean? Most other countries are doing it. We're the only industrialized nation that doesn't have free college education and free health care. I pay 25% of my income in taxes. I don't know how much you pay, but I get, absolutely squat for what I pay. So for marginally more in taxes, we would get so much more. My health care has a $6,500 deductible and a $50 copay if I want an actual appointment. So basically, I have health care that I can't afford to use. Oh, but I'm insured. It's bullshit. We've been so duped, so fleeced. The argument has been spun around 180 degrees. So what democratic socialism means, let me actually read you a definition here. Here's the definition of democratic socialism. And this is from Wikipedia. Democratic socialism is a political philosophy that advocates democracy alongside direct social ownership of the means of production. That's the key part, means of production, with an emphasis on self-management and democratic management of economic institutions within a market or some form of decentralized, planned socialist economy. So there it is. Ownership of the means of production. Okay, so we're not talking about an end to the capitalist ideals where you can climb your way up the ladder. What we're talking about, excuse me, is the idea of like a co-op, where the employees of said company have a stake in said company. And you don't have CEOs getting $22 million a year, 500 times more than the average paid employee in the company. You don't have shareholders making the decisions that affect the employees. You have employees on that board of directors. So they're controlling the direction of the company and and getting a stake in it, in the success of it. So talk about it's raising the bottom up as opposed to trickle down, which, what does that sound like? It sounds like somebody pissing on you. I'm not down with the trickle down. It's never worked. Never worked. So you look at a co-op, right? And then, what most democratic socialist nations do is they remove certain industries from competition because that they've found that leaving those open to just cutthroat competition leads to tyranny. So, and some of them are just immoral. So education should not be for profit. Look at our school loan system in the U.S. now, where your average, college grad, graduates with, $50,000 to $100,000 in student debt. You know, and our system is so corrupt. What's her name? Betsy DeVos, the head of the, education department. She's directly invested in student loan collection agencies. So she's directly profiting from that. Talk about a conflict of interest. But I digress once again. So education should not be for profit. Doesn't make sense, right? Healthcare should not be for profit. We, the taxpayers, pay for the research and development of these pharmaceutical drugs that then get privatized, and then we pay through the nose for them. The same AOC, Ms. Cortez, recently was drilling a big pharma exec and asking why the same medication here, I think it was AIDS medication, so something very essential, was $2,000 a month here and $8 in Australia. So we're absolutely bent over the barrel head. So I just don't get it. I don't get it. People are so quick to parrot the whole thing of socialism has never worked. And they'll bring up Venezuela. Well, actually, when Chavez took power of Venezuela, he really turned the country around and it improved greatly. The quality of life for the average Venezuelan improved greatly. What has totally fucked Venezuela is our economic sanctions on them. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about that. But I won't go into Venezuela too much because that's a whole nother thing. But it's democratic socialism. Social ownership of the means of production. So society benefits from that corporation. So, something like Amazon, if that was to operate under democratic socialism, the employees of Amazon would have a whole lot more of a stake in that company. Jeff Bezos would probably still be the richest human on the planet, but the level just wouldn't be quite as obscene. So we're not talking about taking away. It's more just a leveling of equaling the rules, the same rules for everybody. End corporate bailouts, end corporate tax breaks, same rules for everybody. Amazon made $11 billion last year and paid shit in taxes? Wow. So how does that help our society? Oh, they're creating jobs. Yeah, but does that put any money into our economy? No. Oh, well, only their $15 an hour employees are putting the money into the economy. Well, and Jeff Bezos himself, when he's buying new yachts and planes and whatever. But imagine if we taxed that corporation that profited. They didn't make. They made $11 billion in profit. I don't even know. That would be an astronomical amount in taxes that would benefit our society. Our infrastructure is crumbling, and we're bending over backwards for these corporations, and your average citizen gets shit out of it. But you hear people parrot this crap that we've been programmed to believe my entire life. It's never worked. Socialism has always failed. Name one place. Name one place where it's failed. You get Nazi Germany. That was not socialism. That was a dictator. You get Stalin. That was a dictator. Then you get the Soviet Union, later Soviet Union. That was communism. You get China. That's communism. So, it just kills me when people are so quick to have these knee-jerk reactions in this era where, with 3 clicks, you have access to so much information. But people are so quick to believe what they're fed from the idiot box. And there's six corporations that own basically all the major media outlets. So You know, they have an agenda. They have an agenda. You know, MSNBC might be a little further left, way further left than Fox, but they're both funded by major corporations that, well, Rupert Murdoch is Fox and he's got his whole own thing going on. But MSNBC, I forget who their ownership is, but it's they're complete war hawks. You'll never hear MSNBC speak out against war. Why? Because it's in their mission statement. It's how the parent company makes money. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you're digging what I'm doing, picking up what I'm throwing down, please subscribe over here and share with friends. This has been Dave with And Another Thing with Dave. Peace out.